Hello, welcome to Ember Learning Labs Live at 5. We're looking forward to talking about the topic of Am I Ready for Chemistry? Here in a moment, my husband, Sean Fulkerson, will be joining me. I'm Rochelle Fulkerson, and I currently teach some chemistry classes to the homeschooling community. Interestingly enough, my husband is also teaching chemistry right now in the public school setting. So we wanted to come to you today, give you some information about how important it is, information about getting yourself prepared for the chemistry class, how you can be successful in there, and just some tips as to things that you can study if you're not in chemistry yet to get you ready to go. So, first of all, we wanted to address the question, do I need chemistry? And in the Lone Star State, if you're attempting to graduate high school, the answer is yes. You do need chemistry. The powers that be said that that is one of the courses that you are required to take along with biology and a third science. So, do I need it? Well, if you want to graduate, yes. But in addition to that, in addition to someone else telling you you need it, chemistry is one of those courses that is a beginning stretcher course, is what I would call it. You're starting to combine different different subjects into one thing. And you get into chemistry, you're adding science and math together, like it is truly in the real world in scientific research and things, they're combined. So chemistry is that first step to putting things together, to applying some of the science that you're learning, and math is an important part of that. So we wanted to talk about when should I take chemistry? In my experience, it's a good idea to take chemistry after you've taken biology. That's a very logical progression. Will biology help you much in chemistry? Not so much, in that the two fields are not as related as, say, physics and chemistry are. It is, though, a good place to lay a foundation. Understand biology, then jump into chemistry and start applying it and stretching yourself. We also recommend that because you are combining sciences and maths in chemistry, that you take this class after you've completed Algebra 1. I've seen students do it while taking Algebra 1, and they are not as successful. They have a little bit of a harder time because they're grasping, having to learn chemistry and the math, and it just makes it twice as hard. So it's our recommendation that you take Algebra 1 first, and then you join chemistry, which makes sense. If you take biology and Algebra 1 together, then you've laid the foundation and are ready to jump into chemistry. So we're going to spend a few minutes here talking about, well, what are the kind of things I need to know before I come to the chemistry classroom that will help it be successful. First of all, we wanted to talk about something that's actually pretty important and will speed up your learning in the chemistry class, and that is something you may not expect, but it's calculator skills. So Sean's going to join me now, and we're going to talk about a couple of calculators. We're going to give you a little mini demo, show you some of the calculators that we recommend for use in the chemistry classroom, not just recommending use for them, but being comfortable with them and knowing how they work. I've had a lot of students come to class this year feeling like, oh, well, I haven't used calculators before, I don't need them now. It's definitely going to help your chemistry progression, the speed of things, to use a calculator. So yes, you get to use a calculator. So joining me now is Sean, and we're going to talk about a couple of the calculators that we recommend for the chemistry class. So you want to start with a basic type?
All right, so we have some examples here. We don't have a complete set of every calculator in the world, but one of the most let's start with the most basic option-ish. Well, not the most basic option, but one of the most common options that everybody's going to have access to. Not all high school students have access to them for sure, but if they do, then everybody has this calculator right here or this calculator right here. Okay, so you can use your cell phone calculator. It will do everything you need to do in a chemistry class. It's a great option if you have access to that, and it's free if you already have the cell phone.
Right. One thing to note, that the iPhone specifically, when turned on its side, it goes from just a basic calculator, but when you turn it on its side, it should switch, mine's not happy, to a scientific calculator. And so that's where you're going to get more buttons and see more options for turning, and you're going to be able to use the scientific calculator.
Or if you're really cool and have an Android, it actually works. Ha!
I don't know why mine's not working. I'll have to look. Anyway, usually my calculator works. Turning to the side, it's not gonna. It's just technical. Okay.
Anyway, that's a great option. Another great option is a cheap scientific calculator. These are a couple of different versions of almost the same thing. A couple of different models. These are Casio FX 260 and Casio FX 250. These are ones that Rochelle has used for
Since
a
I
long
was in high
time.
school?
Yeah, a long time. And I will stress this before I even say it. This is personal preference. My high school math teacher used a Casio. In fact, she probably still does for a long time. Even though she recommended us getting TI calculators, not quite sure how that happened. But personal preference, I do not prefer the Casios. But these are great little calculators. Something simple, and they do everything you need to do.
They're not very expensive, in the $5 to $10 range.
Yeah, that's one of the really great things. And if you don't have a cell phone, you're gonna need a calculator. Rochelle and I just recently got TI 36X Pro. This is kind of their top of the line scientific calculator. The cost of this versus their more standard scientific calculators, the TI 34. You can still find TI 32s and 30s as well, but this costs $20, whereas a TI 34 costs $15. Now you have to be careful because like this TI 36 has some computer algebra system or calculator algebra system, whatever they happen to call it, functionality, which means that it's not usable on some tests. I believe, and we'll try to put out here pretty soon a list of SAT, ACT, all that kind of stuff. What calculators you can and can't use for those, because if you're trying to plan ahead, that'd be a good deal. If I would have thought about it, we would have put it in today's checklist. That's a good segue. In the description, there's a checklist form, checklist version of kind of this video, real succinct version of what you need for chemistry, not just the math, but what concepts you need to know about. So anyway, a more $15 to $20 scientific calculator is going to be a really, really great option. That TI 34, if I was just saying that's just what you should go out and buy today, that's going to be my number one recommendation. We decided to get, I was going to get this particular, or the TI 36, partially because I'm a nerd, and partially because it's got some fun things as far, it can do matrices, at least some of the basics and some stuff, which was going to be handy for some of the things that I was wanting to do. And it's easier to whip out than what we're going to show you next. And so I wanted to get this one, and Rochelle wanted to have the same in case she gets stuck and I could help her with it. So that's why we got the 36 Pro, and it's got cool silver buttons, chromed buttons. But anyway, TI 34 would be my recommendation if you're just wanting a scientific calculator that would do everything you need to do. So the next level above, and I actually have 3 graphing calculators. This is the highest end one that I own. The other 2 that I have are actually up at school, and I didn't bring those home to show you. This happens to be the TI 89 Titanium. Is it worth the cost? Probably not. In my high school math classes, we were only barely allowed to use calculators, and so I learned how to do a lot of stuff without them. There were a lot of people in my calculus classes that swore by these and thought they were the greatest thing since sliced bread, and may have not been able to pass their calculus classes without them. I'd recommend learning how to actually do the math, but this is a good option if you really feel like you need a graphing calculator. The TI 84, it's the theme of fours here. The TI 83, the TI 83 Plus, the 84 Titanium, or not Titanium, whatever the heck it is, 83, 84 are going to be your most common graphing calculators that you'll use in college. Although, honestly, for 98.5% of what you're going to be doing, a scientific calculator is going to be a lot better option. I have the TI-34Xs at school, and in my science classes, kids love them. For some things, they're actually a lot easier to use than the TI-84s that are in the math classrooms. They're graphing calculators. They're just a lot simpler to use. They handle fractions a little bit easier and quicker, and it's easier to switch between decimal form and exact notation and stuff. So that's going to be for most of what you're going to need, and definitely everything in chemistry. A decent scientific calculator for $15 is way better than a $120 graphing calculator.
Right. So just to summarize, the types of functions you're going to need to be familiar with on your calculator are the basic adding, subtracting, multiply, divide. But something that I've had to teach a lot this year was learning how to use your scientific calculator with the scientific notation. Okay, so that it's not hard. It's a series of buttons, and once your fingers learn it, you'll just be whipping it out without thinking about it. But make sure that you practice that, or if you don't know, YouTube a video. How do I put in scientific notation in my calculator? You'll also need to use things like square roots and the squared function. And again, all of those functions, all those buttons are on a smartphone scientific calculator. So we're not saying you have to go out and buy a top-of-the-line calculator, but you do need to be familiar with the one you're using so it can come quickly and easily. It is meant to aid you, not to give you a roadblock. And I found this year that there's been more roadblocking, and I had to stop and teach more calculator skills. So be familiar with your own calculator, get it, play with it, read the little manual they send with it, if you feel like you want to. But that is one of the biggest recommendations I have for a smooth transition into chemistry is just knowing your calculator. There are a few other things that we recommend. One is knowing how to at least Google and look at an image of a scale. Okay, what I'm talking about is something that measures the mass of substance. Typically in science we call, there's two terms, there's a balance and a scale, and that scale is something that you will see again, possibly ACT. If you take any type of science test, you're going to see something like this. They like to test on how to use a scale or a balance. And so you might just Google balance. You could even Google triple beam balance. That's typically what's used in a high school laboratory, kind of see what's going on. So when you get to college and you're doing a lab and they're asking you, can you please measure out 5 grams so that you kind of know what you're doing? Okay, so that's just a recommendation that you are at least familiar with that. In addition to all of that, we wanted to talk about a few topics, math topics, that you're going to want to be familiar with that will, again, ease the transition into. It seems fairly simple, but understanding the metric system. We do everything in chemistry in the metric system. That's the measurement, what do they call that? Measuring system that they use in the scientific community. So being aware of those prefixes like centi and milli and understanding deca, what that means when we're dealing with numbers, that's really important. So you want to brush up on that, understand what that's talking about. When I have a centimeter, what does that mean? Okay. In addition to that, you're going to want to know a little bit about temperature scales. Now, we're not asking you to be able to convert between temperature scales or anything like that. You'll learn that in the class. But being aware that Fahrenheit is not the only temperature scale. There's actually multiple temperature scales, being aware of that and understanding kind of how they relate. Another Algebra 1 topic that you're going to want to look at is the idea of proportions. And I know that's something that we talk about, but we'll use that idea of proportions in chemistry again. So being exposed to that will help. My favorite, converting between units. This is something that lays the foundation for a topic that is a little bit trickier called stoichiometry. But if you can handle unit conversions, converting between units, I have 3 feet, I want to know how many inches that is, okay? Making those basic conversions, understanding how to set that up in a factor label method type or dimensional analysis or whatever you want to call it, where your units are canceling out. Being able to do that will aid you greatly when you get on to the higher Okay, now we're talking about a chemical equation. We're trying to figure out if I start with this much chemical, how much can I make? Okay, it makes things easier if you have that foundation laid. You'll be doing a lot of word problems. In fact, almost all the examples are word problems. And being able to pick out units and understand what they're asking for, what they've given you. Again, that's something that you probably saw back in third grade. My kids are doing that right now in their third grade math curriculum. But not being afraid of that and having some tricks and tips for that is really important. Common factors, understanding the idea of common factors and order of operations. Calculators are unique in how they will deal with order of operations. That's going to be important. And I know most of the tricks and can help you through, okay, well, do I stick the negative sign in first or do I stick in it at the end? Because with certain calculators, it matters. Do I need to put parentheses around this or will it switch up my order of operation? So being aware there is an order of operation and your calculator is sensitive to that, that's just something to be aware of and have an understanding of. Anything else that I skipped that you can think of in the math world? I think that covers it.
I think that covers it pretty good. If you're having a hard time keeping up and you're furiously writing notes and things, we do have a checklist version of this. Link is in the description. And before we hit the very last topic, I want to remind you, since I don't know if you noticed, but we are on YouTube now instead of Facebook Live, and so we definitely would appreciate any likes, comments, and if you subscribe to our videos. We're going to have some other videos that are not just these live videos as well. Like we probably will do a few rundowns of some basic stuff with a few various calculators.
Yeah, definitely.
And things like that here pretty soon, along with other things. So anyway, like, comment, subscribe. We're here on YouTube now. It's just an easier place for us to be. We have more options, but
right.
We have one more section, some science background information that you need to know, and here
right.
it is.
Okay, if you took a biology course, it is very likely that you touched on some of these things, or anything in middle school, the science course that you took. This is a basic understanding, and we will build on that, but it's always nice to have a good foundation in things like elements, understanding that there is a periodic table of elements that list out the 119 that we have plus that we have actually discovered and or created, things like oxygen, nitrogen, carbon. So just a basic understanding that there are things called elements. Additionally, states of matter. There's 3 states of matter: solid,
4.
liquid, and gas. Oh, and plasma.
Nerd.
Yeah, exactly. We can't deal much with the plasma, but we can mess around with the other 3 states of matter. So understanding that, and then a basic understanding of something that is metal versus something that is not a metal. So this would be like aluminum, metal. Oxygen, not a metal. Okay, so just some basic understanding.
Silicone. What?
It's like metalloid is what that is. Kind of crazy. And
to be continued.
Right, exactly. To be learned in chemistry class. Don't worry if you don't know what a metalloid is. We will teach that to you.
It's
in
really
chemistry.
cool.
Right. So that basically concludes our Am I Ready for Chemistry class rundown. And again, we've got this all in a check sheet. What you'll do when you click on the link, it's going to have you go to our Ember Learning Labs website, put your name in, shows us that, hey, I was interested in chemistry. So when we offer a chemistry course, then we can send you information about that. It is possible that I will be offering a summer chemistry intensive class. Physics is on the books, but if I have enough interest, I may offer a chemistry physics intensive in addition to the classes next year. So if you are interested in that, please give us a comment. Check out questions at emberlearninglabs.com, or send any questions you might have, or give us just some feedback. So that ends our Am I Ready for Chemistry. You check through these things, then you're going to have a great foundation and be very successful in there. I'm going to go ahead and sign off now. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you Wednesday live at 5 in our discussion of Arduino versus Lego robotics. You're not going to want to miss it. We'll see you later.